Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast with Phil Graham. We help you master Facebook ads and give you an unfair advantage over your competition. Are you ready? Let's go.
Hey, podcast fam. Welcome to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast, episode 261. I'm Phil Graham. I got to tell you, this is one of my favorite parts of the week. I love being here with you guys. And today, I'm going to be sharing 5 hot Facebook and Instagram ad audiences that you should be using and testing. These audiences have worked so well for us, and so many people who advertise are either just using one audience or not properly testing audiences. And there's certain audiences they don't use at all that they should be, that could really help and give them a lot of success. So I hope you guys are doing well. If you want to get in touch with me, maybe you're looking for some one-on-one coaching so you can finally learn this ad stuff the right way, one-on-one, specific to you and your situation. Or maybe you actually want to have somebody that you trust, a professional, run your ads for you. For either one of those things, you can go to my website, philgrahamdigital.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at philgrahamdigital, and we can connect. So I've got a future episode coming up for you guys that I don't want you to miss out, because one of the things that I think you guys should be trying, if you haven't already, is Instagram story ads and also Reels ads. Those are very powerful right now. So hopefully you've been running those, but either way, whether you have or you haven't, make sure you pay attention, because in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to have an episode about not only how to do that and why to do it, but how to do it effectively. Make sure you watch for that very soon. And before we jump into the content and I share the audiences that I think you should be testing, I've got a little public service announcement for you, a little fake guru scammer alert. So I was talking to somebody today, shout out to Lindsay. What's up, Lindsay? And she was mentioning how she gets bombarded all the time from marketers and ad people about, hey, there's just this one thing. If you just had this one secret or this one trick or this one hack, you'd be rich. You'd make $1 gazillion. You just need this one little secret. And luckily, she's smart. She knew that that's BS. But a lot of people don't know any better. And if you've been taken advantage of because of that, it doesn't mean you're not smart. It just means that you got screwed. And I don't want you to get screwed. So I'm here to tell you that anytime you see somebody say, there's just this one thing, this one tweak, or this one thing you need, this one secret, and you'll be rich, it's complete and total BS. I want you to think about it this way. Imagine something that you've either built. Maybe it's a business you've built that you have, your own business, or maybe it's something you're really good at, some kind of a skill you have, or maybe you're really good at relationships, whatever it is. Think of something you're really good at or something you've built through a lot of hard work. Now, if somebody said, hey, there's just one little trick and you could be just as good as me at this, what would you say to that? If they could think that they just need one little hack to be as good as you are at that skill, you'd be like, you're insane. You know, you worked to either build that business or be good at whatever it is you're good at. There's not one little trick that's going to just magically make somebody like you. It doesn't work that way. And it's the same thing when it comes to ads and marketing. So be very careful. Stay away from all those people because they're just trying to take your money. So with that being said, let's jump into the content and talk about 5 hot Facebook and Instagram audiences that you should be testing. You know, so many people just run ads, they set it and forget it. Maybe use one audience or 2, and that's it. You need to take control of your audiences. You need to control your messaging. You need to test different things within that Facebook ecosystem, because what works really well changes all the time. And you've got to use data to make good decisions. You can't just set something and forget it. So let's talk about 5 audiences I recommend you guys using and testing. The first 3 are going to be cold audiences, and then the other 2 are going to be warm. So let's start with the cold audience. Number 1, a lookalike audience. Now, a lot of people do use lookalikes, and I do recommend a 1% lookalike. I've recommended that for a long time, but there's also a little wrinkle to that that's somewhat recent that's changed. I used to never use anything above a 1% lookalike. However, these days, we're finding some really good success with a 5% lookalike audience, 5%. I used to never go above 1, but I still test things all the time. And once 5% started working really well in some situations, I started using that and testing it more. And so I recommend testing 2 different lookalike audiences a 1%, and a 5%. If you haven't run a 5%, I definitely recommend you try it and test it out in your situation. It could do very well. Now, in addition to that, there's like little things to go with it. Like, should you do a purchase lookalike or add to cart or something else? I usually start with, if you have enough people that have purchased, a lookalike based off of your actual customers. If you don't have enough, then you could try a lookalike based off of add to cart. If you don't have enough of those yet, you could do it based off of email subscribers. If you don't have enough of those yet, you could then do it based off of people that have either viewed your website or engaged with your Facebook or Instagram page or watched one of your videos on Facebook, etc. But find a good audience to start with and create a 1% and also a 5% lookalike audience off of one of those. And so you'll have two lookalike audiences that you're running, and test those. And then, of course, once you get those going, you can test videos versus images. You can test different headlines and all the different things with creatives, all the things, right? But make sure that you're testing a 1% and a 5% lookalike audience for your cold audience. So that's number one. Audience number two that I recommend you guys use and test is one cold segmented audience. So this is going to be segmented primarily by demographic information. So you could segment by age, by location, or by something else. Like maybe you want to segment to just moms, for example. That would be a good way to segment. It depends, obviously, there's so many different options, but you want to use something in the demographic area to segment your cold audience so that it's more specific. It's not just a broad audience, it's a little bit segmented. So I would run one ad with that kind of targeting. Now, in regards to that, I would use a couple different things. So you could segment by age, maybe even by gender, by if it's a parent, like a mom or dad, for example, that would be another way to do it. Or you could combine those two or three things together to create a segment. But you want to just use the demographic area for that. And I would create one cold audience based off of that and match some ad copy to whoever it is you're targeting. And that would be another one that I would create. So that's number two. So number one, we have our actually two ads in number one, our 1% and our 5% lookalike broad audiences. Then number two, we've got a cold segmented audience that's segmented based off of some kind of demographic or a combination of demographics. Number three, for our last cold audience, I'm going to recommend one cold interest/behavior segmented audience. So in the above tip, I said to segment based off of demographic. In this ad, you're going to segment based off of either a behavior or an interest that an audience has, or a combination. I like to actually stack a couple of them. There's so many different ways you could go with this. Like you could target people that like a certain movie or like a certain sport or live in a certain area or shop at Whole Foods, or they're engaged shoppers. They bought something from a buy now button on Facebook in the last week. Like there's a million different options for this. So you really want to dive in there and see what you can do that would match who your target audience is. And you just don't want to make the mistake of picking too many things, because let's say you have like 20 different things in there of pages they like or stores they shop at. The problem with that, if you have too many, is that if you don't work, you're not going to know why it didn't work. And even if it does work, you're not going to know why it did work. If it's 20 different things, it might be one or two of them that are really working well, but you wouldn't know that. So you wouldn't be able to scale it. So you want to be careful and not choose too many options, but you could stack 2 or 3 or 4 of those. I wouldn't go above 4. And then if it's working really well, you can pretty quickly figure out if one of the 4 is doing all the heavy lifting for you, and then you can scale that to the moon. So for cold audiences, we're going to have a 1% and a 5% lookalike audience. So those are 2 different audiences in one. We're also going to have a segmented audience based off of demographics. So age, location, maybe somebody who's a parent or some other demographic type of situation. It could be schooling, it could be job related, lots of different options. And then our last cold audience, like I said, is going to be an interest and behavior segmented audience. Make sure that whoever you're segmenting, whoever you're targeting in these audiences, you're using ad copy that really speaks to that kind of person. If you just use generic ad copy for everything, it doesn't really do that much good to segment your audience. You want to match your ad copy with who you're targeting. So those first three are the cold audiences. Then we're going to finish it out with two that are warm audiences. So our last two audiences are the warm audiences. And number four is what I call the broad warm retargeting audience. So in this audience, and hopefully you guys are already doing this, but I know some of you are not. So what you should be doing is retargeting everyone that's in your warm audience. So in the last 6 months, anybody who's visited your website and hit your pixel, anybody who's engaged with your Facebook or Instagram page, or they opted into something or watched one of your videos on Facebook or Instagram. And in this scenario, you also want to match your ad copy to these people, because if they're in your warm audience, they already know, or should know anyway, who you are. Give them some value in this retargeting audience, but also make an offer, have some kind of a sense of urgency and a call to action in there, but keep it fairly broad, because if you sell different products or services, then they may have been interested in one and not another. So you're going to have to keep this one somewhat broad. Okay. And then lastly, number 5, I want you to test what I call a segmented warm audience. Now, these could actually be multiple different ads you could run in different audiences, because you can segment your warm audience in many different ways. So for example, what I would consider the lowest hanging fruit, if you have a shopping cart, for example, is the abandoned cart audience. So anybody who added something to their cart but didn't check out in the last 14 days, that's a high potential right there. So that would be an audience right there that's segmented in your warm audience that you could run an ad specifically to, just them, not everybody else, only to people that abandoned their cart in the last 14 days. That's a high value audience. You want to make sure you get in front of them. And there's other options too. You could segment based off of people that have recently visited your website, maybe in the last 15 days or 2 days. You can pick the time frame, but you can define all this. Or people that have recently engaged with your Facebook or Instagram page, or people that have actually visited a certain page on your website, whether it's for a certain product or service, whatever the case may be. And then obviously, in all of these ads, if you're running different ones to different audiences here, you're going to match the ad copy to who you're targeting. So if it's an abandoned cart ad, you're going to encourage them to finish their order. If it's somebody who visited a certain product page or service page, then you can encourage them to learn more about that specific product or service. You can talk about that and be very specific. I would also have sense of urgency in here and a call to action. And especially what I would consider the lowest hanging fruit, which is the abandoned cart. Give them a reason to buy. Can you maybe offer them a discount code if they finish their order, or something extra? Just give them something, a reason why they should finish their order, and that can be very successful. So I'm going to finish it off and just give you a couple pro tips on all this. But to recap, I would recommend testing 1% and 5% lookalike audiences. I would test one cold segmented audience that's segmented by demographic. And then I would also test a cold segmented audience based off of interests and behaviors, but be careful not to use too many. Like I said, I would be matching my ad copy to all the segmented audiences. Don't just use broad stuff and try and reach everyone. And then number 4, you're going to do a broad, warm retargeting audience to everyone in your warm audience. You're going to run an ad to them. And number 5, you're going to create one or many segmented warm retargeting ads using those audiences like abandoned cart, etc. And for the retargeting, I would use the reach objective. I highly recommend using reach for retargeting. And a couple last pro tips for you guys. Here's the thing. When you're running ads, you should always be testing something with every single ad. With what you're doing right now, are you learning something? Are you testing something with an ad you have running right now? If the answer is no, you might as well turn it off until you figure out what you're going to test. Unless it's making you money, then don't turn it off. Just start testing something, split test it. You always should know why something didn't work or why it did work. If you don't know, then you're in a tough spot. You can't fix it if you don't know, or if it's working, but you don't know why, you can't really properly scale it. So you need to get really good at this stuff. Make sure you always know why something doesn't work or does. Don't turn your ads off too soon. This is another big pro tip. So many people turn their ads off fast. You could be turning off $1 million winner. You never know. Hopefully this episode has been helpful. I highly recommend you guys test these 5 audiences. Episode 261 is in the books. I got a lot of great things ahead in upcoming episodes, so make sure you listen. Thank you guys so much for being here. I will talk to you next time. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Next Level Facebook Ads Podcast. Please remember to subscribe and share this with all your friends. For show notes, more tips, and to learn more about Phil, please visit philgrahamdigital.com/podcast.